Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening in the presentation of our re-entry plan for East Providence. Dr. Ferran is going to take you through the plan this evening. What we want you to understand is this plan is a plan that is flexible. It is fluid. It is constantly changing. In fact, today, as a result of some input from the Rhode Island Department of Ed, we have had to make some changes in our plan for this evening, and we'll explain where those changes are going to occur. I'll also like to remind everyone that it is not the superintendent's decision as to whether schools return or not. And if you've been watching the governor on her news conferences, it is the governor's decision as to whether Rhode Island schools will return on August 31st. If you heard her today, we are still in phase 3, and we have gone backwards a little bit in the fact that she has reduced the number of people from 25 to 15, and the rate of inspection, the index number was a little higher than she wanted to see. So she extended phase 3 until August 27th. A lot of people have put in a lot of time into this plan and in developing this plan. And our number one priority is the safety of our students and the safety of our staff in returning to school. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sandra Ferran, who spearheaded this initiative. Dr. Ferran?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen right now and bring up the slides. So we'd like to begin by speaking about the district priorities. So when we worked on creating this plan, first and foremost, we looked at health and safety, and all decisions that were made really focused on the health and safety of our students and our staff. We looked at equity and making sure that students got what they needed to be successful, collaboration, innovation, resilience, and flexibility. So you probably received a letter from the superintendent that talked about the planning process, but I'd just like to fill you in on that in case you did not see it. So there is a district task force with 21 members that oversaw the whole process and continues to oversee it. That's made up of the different union presidents, school committee members, administrators, a variety of stakeholder groups sit on that task force. From there, we created 4 subcommittees. Teaching and learning was chaired by Principal Bill Black and Principal Anne-Marie Scott. Operations and business services was chaired by Diana Clarkin, our Director of Operations. Physical environment and safety was chaired by Principal Lori Marchand. And our social emotional learning committee was chaired by Principal Rob Perry and Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Leslie Anderson. And each of those committees had approximately 4 members, and again, made up of parents, community members, teachers, administrators, a variety of stakeholders, so that we could get diverse opinions as we explored each of those areas. The overall plan was based on the Rhode Island Department of Ed and the Rhode Island Department of Health guidance, which was released mid-June. You can see that document on the Rhode Island Department of Ed website. We submitted our draft on July 17th, and we were hoping that we would have feedback by Friday. We did receive feedback a couple of hours ago and had to make some changes, and I'll discuss those as we move forward. So as the superintendent said, the decision for re-entry will be made by state officials on August 17th. So I want to go through the different scenarios right now. I'm going to start with elementary. I will fill you in on the middle and high school because I know people have children at multiple grade levels. So for elementary, there are 3 different scenarios that could take place. And that will again be the choice of the governor, whether we come back full in person, whether we come back for a partial return, or we come back for a limited return. So for elementary, if we come back full in person, that would mean that on Monday through Friday, all students in pre-K through grade 5 would be in school in secure groups of 30, and that includes adults. So it is up to 30. Right now, we don't anticipate our groups being that large, but they can be up to 30, including all adults that would push into that classroom. In a partial return, it would be Monday through Friday. Our original proposal, based on the guidance that we received from RIDE, which was that we needed to reduce our population that was in school by 50%, we proposed that grades K through 2 would be in school, along with our special populations, and grades 3 to 5 would be doing distance learning. After a conversation with them today, we were told that all students could come into school and should come into school, and that the reduction in numbers was not meant for elementary schools. So our new proposal would be the same as the full in-person return, where once again, a partial return for elementary would be all students in pre-K through 5 in school in secure groups of 30, including adults. And again, as I said, those numbers right now would be less than 30. In a limited return, that scenario will remain the same as we proposed. So that would be grades pre-K and K would be in school along with special populations, and grades 1 through 5 would be distance learning. Part of the Rhode Island Department of Ed guidance was that they wanted the transition grades in school full-time, and that's why K was the grade that would be coming in school in that limited return. And in the limited return, we would need to reduce the population down to approximately 25% of the school or less. And again, that will not be our decision how we re-enter. That will be the decision of state officials. We've also had to shorten the school hours. So elementary school would be coming in from 9:15 to 3 p.m. That is because we need additional time in between the bus runs in order to sanitize the buses for the next grade levels. So the elementary day, students would remain in the classroom all day, and they would have special subjects such as art, music, phys ed, library, pushing into the classroom. So in previous years, they would get all of those subjects in a week. Now they would probably just get one subject. So they would have art every day for 5 days for the first quarter, so that we limit the number of adults that would be pushing into that classroom. Therefore, keeping those stable pods or stable groups, they call them pods. There's a variety of names for those groups, but we would limit the number of adults that would be going in. We are strongly encouraging outside activities. Classes be held outside anytime it's possible in order to get them out and get them into the fresh air. On days when students are not in school, so that would really be only the limited return, distance learning would be what they would be doing if they were not in school. So for middle school, because the middle school numbers are much larger, a full in-person return on Monday and Tuesday would be all grade 6. Again, it's a transition grade, first year in the middle school. Grade 7, special populations. On Wednesday, all students will distance learn. That's in order to clean the buildings and sanitize them before a different group of students enter. And on Thursday and Friday, we would have all grade 6, our grade 8 students, and our special populations. For a partial return, on Monday, it would be grade 6 and one team of grade 7 with our special populations. On Tuesday, it would be grade 6 and grade 7 with the second team with special populations. Wednesday again would be all day distance learning so that we could sanitize the building. Thursday would be grade 6 and grade 8 team 1 and special populations. And Friday would be grade 6 and grade 8 team 2 and special populations. So the buildings at the middle and high school would be sanitized on Wednesday and Friday because they're Wednesday and over the weekend because there is a change of groups. At the elementary school where the groups are staying stable, those buildings would be sanitized over the weekend for the return on Monday. For a limited return for middle school, it would be all of grade 6 in our special populations with grades 7 and 8 doing distance learning. Wednesday will also remain a distance learning day for all 6th graders. So no one would be in the building on Wednesday. School hours would be 7:45 to 1:30. The day is shortened to clean the buses and sanitize them between the afternoon runs. Middle school will be similar to elementary in that students will remain in the same classroom all day and itinerants will be pushing into the classroom, so their special subjects would go in the rooms. And again, we would highly recommend outside activities and classes whenever possible. So for our high school return scenarios, it would be full in person would be Monday and Tuesday, grades 9 and 11 in special populations. Again, Wednesday is a distance learning day for all. Thursday and Friday would be all grade 10 and special populations. And then Thursday and Friday would be all grade 10 and 12 and special populations. And then for a partial return, Monday and Tuesday would be all grade 9 and 11 and special populations. Wednesday would be all grades distance learning. Thursday and Friday will be all grade 10 and 12 in special populations. And for limited return, it would be Monday grade 9 with special populations, Tuesday grade 11 in special populations, Wednesday would be distance learning, Thursday would be grade 10 in special populations, Friday would be grade 12 in special populations. As you can see in this plan, the full and the partial are the same because we are only bringing in 50% of the population in full, and that continued with the partial, and the limited cuts down to 25% of the high school population. The school hours would be 7:25 to 12:30. Again, early dismissal in order to sanitize the buses in between runs, and then distance learning will take place on any days when students are not in school. So they will be learning 5 days a week, 2 in a full return, 2 would be in person, and then 3 would be distance learning. So I wanted to define what we're referring to as our special populations. So that would be any of our self-contained classes, our therapeutic classes, and our highly specialized classes would be in school almost every day with these scenarios. The next area that we want to move into is health and safety, and we wanted to first speak about face coverings. So all staff and students will be required to wear face coverings. This is probably, if you looked at the full document or the abbreviated document, this is a little bit of a switch from what originally was stated. Again, I believe the governor in her press conference today said that students were required to wear face coverings. So this has been a change, and this will be the district procedure. We will build in intentional mask breaks into the day so that students can, get some fresh air and take off their masks. And if there is a medical reason why your child cannot wear a mask, please contact the school principal to discuss that with them. So the hallways, will be one way whenever possible. We have visual signs in our possession already. We ordered for all the schools. So those will be posted on both the floors and the walls throughout the building. Arrival and dismissal, students will enter the building one way through multiple doors with directions clearly and visually marked on floors and walls. So each principal is working on a plan for their school. We have done walkthroughs of all the buildings, and we are meeting with principals and doing walkthroughs to lay out all of the buildings. It isn't possible in some of the buildings to do one ways because they don't go anywhere, the hallway. So in those buildings where it is possible, that will be done. In buildings where it's not possible, we will not have students passing each other at the same time in opposite directions. So we will still move one-way traffic through the building, and we would just stagger when students are in the hallway. Students who have classrooms that have doors to the outside will be using those doors for arrival and dismissal to avoid using the main hallways. And as I said, individual school plans will vary, and those plans will be communicated to families by principals before school starts. There is a no visitor policy in all of our schools right now. So, if you need to pick up your child for a doctor's appointment, or, if you need to drop something off, you'll be allowed into the vestibules of the school, and then someone will meet you and either bring your child to you for dismissal or come and pick up something if you're dropping it off to school. So classroom layouts. Classrooms will be assigned in ways that minimize distance and traffic. So the way that students enter and exit a classroom, with the first rows going out the door first, the last rows coming in first. We're working on that and making sure that they're not having to cross over, even as they move the traffic flow through classrooms. We are setting up desks and tables to maintain 6 feet of distance wherever possible. Students will always face the same direction, so they'll be facing the front of the classroom. We've had teachers remove all non-essential furniture from the classrooms in order to allow for maximum social distancing. So anything that takes up floor space has been removed from the classroom, if it's not a desk or a table for student seating. Seating will be assigned in each of the classrooms, so students will sit at the same desk every day. And all porous material has been removed. So any items like beanbag chairs or stuffed animals have been removed from classrooms. There won't be any rugs in classrooms. Any type of porous material has been taken out. So for dining, at the high school, it'll be grab and go breakfast. There'll be kiosks out in the hallways and students will be able to walk by and pick up their breakfast and eat it in the classroom as they come in. There will also be grab and go lunches as students are dismissed for the day. Students can bring their own breakfast and lunch into school. That was one of the questions that came up repeatedly. So middle school will have a grab and go breakfast and they'll take it to the classroom. Lunch will be delivered to classrooms for the middle schools. So as of right now, there'll be bag lunches to start the year. We hope to add in some hot lunch options as the year goes on, but we're going to start with bag lunches, cold lunches. And then we're encouraging outdoor dining whenever possible. At the elementary level, all breakfast will be in the classroom. It'll be delivered to the classroom, and all lunches will also be delivered in the classroom for any student that doesn't bring a lunch from home. We're also asking students to bring water from home. We will not be using the water fountains in any of the schools. So as far as school events, so open house and back to school events will be held outdoors or virtually. At this point, the governor just reduced the gathering size for the state. So just about everything will be held virtually to start the school year. Student and parent orientations will be held virtually. Anything that involves transition grades like K, pre-K, 6th grade orientation, principals will be working to create a virtual orientation for students and parents. We will be doing a soft start for kindergarten. We'll be doing screenings that will be performed individually. And we will be making an appointment with parents to bring their child in, and all cleaning protocols will be followed after each student visits the classroom or the common room where it takes place. At this time, there are no after-school activities, no clubs for the beginning of the year. And we still are waiting for word from the Rhode Island Interscholastic League on if any sports will be held and what sports that would be held. So that guidance will be coming out soon. So screenings. So every day before students come to school, we are asking parents to complete a daily symptom check and submit a Google form or a paper copy if needed. Parents will be called if that form is not submitted before students come to school. So it is, I believe it's an 8-question checklist. It's the same COVID screening that the state of Rhode Island is using. And the questions will ask you if students have symptoms that are not related to another pre-known condition. So if a student has allergies and their nose is running and that it's confirmed that it's allergies, you would be able to answer no, that they did not have symptoms that weren't related to something that you already knew. So that we'll be asking parents to do that every morning. We are also actually working to see if we could get it into one of our pre-existing learning platforms to make it easier, and more information will be coming on that. So staff will also need to complete a health screening before entering the building. Again, asking the same questions we're asking of students. And again, it would need to be done before they enter the building. And we would we're strongly asking that you make sure that you check your students every morning for any of these symptoms. and fill out that forms, and the same for staff. If children are not feeling well, the attendance policy is going to be modified. So we ask that you do not send your child to school if they're sick. Ill students and staff policy. So we've had a lot of questions about that. So every school has identified an isolation room. If a student or a staff member was not feeling well, the nurse would be called if they had any of those symptoms, and the nurse would report to that classroom, bring the child or the adult to the isolation room. And there's actually a 3-page protocol that would be followed. And that is listed on the full document, which is on our website. And it's actually the ill students and staff policy. So you could look at that if you would like to see what the full policy is. So we are waiting for a quarantine policy for possible exposure to a student or a staff member, or guidance on if a family member at home has it, what that would mean for the student. So that policy will be given to us by the Rhode Island Department of Health. We actually have been reviewing the daycare and camp policy, but there will be one provided for schools. So as soon as that's available, I know that has been a question that has come up multiple times. As soon as that's available, we'll make sure that we communicate that information. So hygiene, hand washing opportunities will be provided for students at regular intervals. Many classrooms at the elementary school have sinks built in to the classroom, so we'll be using those. There'll also be restroom schedules for each of the classes, and we will have our custodians cleaning the restroom in between those stable pods. Hand sanitizer will be available in all classrooms and the hallways. Desks will be wiped down if the group of students in a classroom changes. And there is a regular cleaning schedule that will be implemented and monitored in each building. And that will be part of our policy in our main document. So it is not there yet, but it will be added soon. Signs regarding health and safety will be posted throughout the building. So we have signs ready to go that speak about social distancing, mask wearing, COVID symptoms, and those will be washing your hands. Those will be posted throughout all of our buildings. And we will be providing training on health and safety issues to all students and staff. So the Rhode Island Department of Health will be putting out a training video that all staff will watch before school starts, and then we'll be working with students to emphasize all of these universal precautions. District supplies have been secured, including sanitizing material, cleaning supplies, and PPE for all schools. We continue to order and stock up on these items, but we do feel like we're in a very good place with the material that's necessary for the beginning of the school year. So I know a big concern is, what will classrooms look like? So there will be 6 feet of spacing in the classrooms whenever possible. There will be no sharing of materials in classroom. Each student will need to have their own materials. Students will be in rows, all facing the same direction. The teacher will maintain 6 feet of distance whenever possible. There will not be any close group work. And again, principals are currently working on plans for their schools, which include traffic flow, entrance and exit to the building, hallway, daily schedules, recess breaks, all of that right now. Principals are working on, and they'll have a completed plan by next Friday. And once those plans are completed, they will also be posted on the website, and we will make them available to all parents. So we know people want to know what the classrooms look like. So we actually have been walking through all of the classrooms, as I think I said earlier, and working on setting up classrooms. So this is right now what an elementary classroom looks like. I know a lot of our classrooms now have tables in them. So we have looked at all the tables. Tables that allow for the correct social distancing will be used in classrooms where they can be fit, but we will be looking at different configurations using a variety of desks and tables. So, classroom furniture that's in your child's classroom now may not be the same furniture that's there when the school year starts. This is what a typical middle school classroom will look like to start the year. And this is what our high school classrooms will look like. So I think there's been a lot of questions about this, and I want to make sure this is very clear to parents. And the governor did come out and say this today. You have a choice. So families have two options to choose from. So the first one is if you want your child to come back to school in person, then that's your first option. We don't know whether it will be the full, the partial, or the limited plan when we come back in person. As the superintendent said, the governor is going to decide that. So if you choose full in-person education, it will be one of those three scenarios that I talked about earlier. You also have a full distance learning option. So if you do not feel comfortable sending your child back to school, or if your child has a medical condition that you think it would not be appropriate for them to come back to school at this time, we are offering a full distance learning option. It will be East Providence teachers that are teaching in the distance learning option. That question has come up several times. We are asking that you commit to a full semester. So the full semester would be August 31st to January 25th. And the reason that we're asking that is because a lot of planning needs to go into setting up these distance learning classes. So your child would have an East Providence teacher, but let's say we have 25 students from grade 1 that choose distance learning, and they're from all the schools across the district. We would assign a teacher to that class, and the class would, that teacher would be responsible for those students, even though they're not from one school. So there is a lot of planning that has to go into this distance learning option. And so again, we're asking you to commit from August 31st to January 25th. We have not made a determination on second semester. As we move forward, more than likely there will be a second semester distance learning option, but right now we're just looking to get the first semester started and things moving, and then we'll reach out to everyone after that. So what will that look like? So there will be live lessons. So there will be a schedule every day. Students will be expected to log in at certain times to receive their math instruction and their English instruction and their other classes. There will also be recorded lessons at times. Maybe the teacher's working with a small group and another group might be watching a recorded lesson, and there will be assignments that will be pushed out. Distance learning would be, again, evaluated at the second semester mark, and parents would have the opportunity to send children back to school at that point, or to enroll for the second semester if you so choose to continue, or if you at that point you want to be new to the distance learning in the second semester, that will also be an option. So if your child is on a full distance learning for the semester, again, it would be in place for students who parents have decided that the student would not return to school. We sent a survey on July 27th. So on Tuesday afternoon, we sent a survey to families regarding distance learning, and we're asking that you commit by August 7th so that we can begin to plan classrooms. If you did not get the survey by email, you can access it on the district website. It's up at the top, and you can just click on that form and fill out that Google form. So distance learning will be by semester, again, January 25th to the end of the first semester. And again, set schedule, live classes. It will match the expectations as the in-person classroom. So there have definitely been a lot of questions on what distance learning would look like if parents chose that option for their students. So I hope that that clarifies that. So now, if you choose the in-person instruction, what could happen at any point if the state was to see a spike, we could end up going out on distance learning. So if that happened, it would again be a combination of live and recorded lessons. We learned a lot from the spring, and we know that we need more face-to-face time with students, more teaching time. So it would be a set schedule with teachers teaching live to students in either whole groups or small groups. And that is definitely in the surveys we have of parents, that was definitely asked for, and we have heard that. Again, if a student couldn't make it because they weren't available at a particular time for some reason, we would be recording so that students could go back, or if they wanted to watch a lesson again because they needed an additional time, they could also watch that lesson again. a set schedule for students while they're at home, and expectations for distance learning will be clearly communicated to parents by the school and the teacher. We also had requests for workshops or videos for parents to help with Google Classroom and the different technology platforms that we use. So that is another thing that we will be creating, and that'll either be virtual workshops that you could attend in person, or we will be sending out videos to help with those areas that parents express concern. So as far as teaching and learning goes, regular, and this would be distance learning or in-person learning. So regular assessments will be built into instruction, including both formative and summative assessments, in order to continue to monitor student progress. So we know that, in the springtime, it was an abrupt exit from school. We are concerned with learning loss in the spring and over the summer. So, we will be regularly assessing students through our instruction and through our iReady platform to make sure that students are getting what they need. And we're making sure that whatever instruction students need to review from last year, that they have that opportunity. Special education support services, such as speech, OT, PT, and multilingual language learners, that instruction will take place both in the classroom and virtually. So again, we're looking at those stable pods. Some of those teachers will be included in those stable pods. They may push into classrooms, they may pull out of classrooms, or they may be doing instruction virtually. If students are on distance learning and they receive those services, we will be providing those services virtually through live lessons. Again, reteaching based on last year's assessment, as well as the beginning of the year diagnostics. So we will be giving the iReady diagnostic, whether in person or whether students are on distance learning, so we can assess where students are excelling and where they may need some additional instruction. Students will take special subjects by quarter. Again, PE, art, music, library, technology, those types of special subjects will be, all students will receive them still. But again, it will be 5 days a week for a quarter, and then those teachers would push into a different classroom, so they'd get a new subject. We heard through our survey that we needed to address the area of rigor and also a balanced workload when we are on distance learning. So that will be a focus in our classrooms. And I just wanted to note that band and chorus at this point require 14 feet of space between students. So that is creating an additional barrier for us. That space distance is a lot to bring students together. So social emotional supports. So we know that this has been a difficult time for families, our students, our staff, and we are very aware of that. So part of our plan has a social emotional learning plan for both students and staff, and that was developed by our district team. We've hired a social emotional learning coordinator who will be providing training to staff and working alongside staff in our classrooms to support. We have social workers full-time in every one of our schools, and we also have psychologists that will be in some of our schools. Staff will not be traveling building to building. So if staff is split between buildings, they will be assigned to a single building. So there will be no staff in the school department that will move between multiple buildings. We are really going to place, especially at the beginning of the year, an emphasis on relationship building, knowing that at any time we may be in school one day and we might have to switch on a dime, and the next day we may be out of school. So we really want to establish those relationships with our students as soon as possible. So that will be a focus the first couple of weeks of school. We're asking that, if your child is having difficulty, please reach out to us, be proactive. We want to work with you to make sure that they have the support they need. We know, for many students, this has been a very anxious and scary time. And if you communicate with us with that, we will make sure that we reach out and work to support you through this and your student through this. So district technology. So the district will issue Chromebooks to all students in grades K through 12. We will be refreshing Chromebooks that were out. We know some people have broken screens or missing keys, and we want everyone to have up-to-date technology. So all K-12 students will be issued Chromebooks. If they are doing in-person learning, they will bring that Chromebook back and forth to school every day with their charger. So we would ask that at night you make sure that Chromebook is charged and then it comes back into school with students the next day. We do have GoGuardian software installed on all district technology. This does allow teachers to see what students are working on, and it also helps them to facilitate instruction. And again, we'll be doing workshops and recordings for parents on Google Classroom and other technology. Busing, so many of you probably heard that busing is a big issue for schools around the state. Right now, the guidelines only allow for one student per seat unless there are siblings, they may sit together. So what we're asking is if you have other means of transportation that you please use that first, and that we try to reserve seats on the bus for students whose only means of getting to school is the bus. Right now, we're exploring pushing out the mileage limits if need be. Once we see what students are choosing distance learning and what students are choosing in-person learning, we'll have a better idea of the number of students that need busing, and then we'll be reaching out to all the parents whose students take the bus and communicating with you to see if you'll need the bus and then working with you to address that issue. So we do believe that at the middle and high school, it won't be as much of an issue because they are using a hybrid model. So we do think we may be able to handle that. And but again, we need to see how many students choose distance learning first, and then we'll be contacting parents about busing. So I'm sure as you saw earlier, the plan continues to evolve daily. It was only a couple of hours ago that we needed to shift gears with that partial return. We still have a couple of areas that we need to address with RIDE and then send our plan back by Friday and wait for approval. At this point, everything, again, in the plan is subject to change. I mean, we are trying to be very transparent and let you know as things are changing, like today. We have our return to learn document that we sent out to parents. It's a condensed version of the full plan. The full plan on the district website is over 100 pages. It has a lot of links. The return to learn document was about 10 pages, and it was a condensed version that we felt addressed a lot of the major issues that parents had concerns about. So you can find both of those documents on the district website, and both of those documents will need to be updated with this new information. So I went through all of the elementary questions that came in. Many were answered in the PowerPoint. I did pull out some that weren't addressed through the presentation, and I wanted to address some of those. Again, so the quarantine plan, I did speak about that earlier. That came up quite often. It will be released from RIDE and the Rhode Island Department of Health shortly, and we will make sure that that gets out to you. So there were questions about staff being tested regularly for COVID. We are not requiring staff to be tested. After school programs. So right now, we are working with our after school coordinators to see if we will be able to run these programs after school. There are many barriers, such as being able to sanitize those spaces and the guidelines that have been put in place by the Department of Health and the Department of Ed. So as of right now, we don't have a solid answer on whether those after school and before school programs will be running, but we will continue to keep you informed as we work with those programs to see if we can find a solution to the issues we're facing. So masks at recess came up in a few of our questions. So if students cannot maintain 6 feet of distance at recess, masks will still be required. But if we can space students out more than 6 feet, or even during a mask break, we can have students outside. They can take a couple minutes to take their masks off and maintain that 6 feet of distance from others. We do know it's difficult for students to wear masks all day. We as adults have a difficult time with that. So we are going to build those breaks in as much as we possibly can. And we're going to work with students and families that, if students having a difficult time, we're going to try and educate and work with them, and to make sure that they understand the safety issues involved. And if we need to give additional mask breaks to some students, we'll work to do that. So there was a question about, will there be more than one teacher in a classroom? That is not the plan. The plan is to move forward as we normally do with a single teacher in a classroom. There will be other teachers that push into that classroom that can go into that classroom to support if need be. So recess, all students will have recess, a minimum of the 20-minute recess period. We are talking to principals about building in outdoor classroom time in addition to that recess period, and getting students out for those breaks. At this time, the playground equipment, right now, our best thinking is that the playground equipment will not be used because playground equipment would have to, the entire thing would have to be sanitized in between every stable pod. And we just don't have the manpower right now to do that. That may change as we go forward. We may be able to schedule certain days or times that students can use it. But to start the year, most of the playground big equipment will not be in use. We will work to provide other things for students to play with, balls and that type of stuff that can be used in their stable pod. So we had a couple of questions about Boston K and station rotation. So station rotation will not look the same because there will be no sharing of materials and there will be no close group work. But the Boston K will be meeting, any of the teachers that implement Boston K will be meeting to discuss how we will implement that program. We had many questions about class sizes. So we have been looking at the distance learning numbers coming in. We have been walking through the buildings with our class sizes. It's very difficult to give a solid answer on what your child's class size will be. But right now we're looking at class sizes somewhere between 18 and maybe 20 or 21 in most of the classes throughout the district. So the numbers are definitely lower than they have been. And then I did mention this early, second semester distance learning. Right now we are focusing on the first semester, but I'm sure we will be examining second semester distance learning, and information will be coming out later on that once we get the school year going. So if you have questions, if they're building specific questions, we ask that you reach out to your principal. We also have an email dedicated specifically to reopening questions. So it's 20-21 reopening at epschoolsri.com. We ask that you be patient. We will respond as quickly as we can. It's a limited number of people that would be responding, and we are the ones working on the reopening plan. So if you could just give us a little time, we will definitely get to your questions if you have them. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to the superintendent. You need to unmute.
Okay, sorry. I'm just going to say a little bit about the testing. We will have protocols set up if a student or a staff member should develop any of the symptoms. We will have protocols set up. Our nurses are working together on that now. The governor, in a press conference today, however, clearly stated that the turnaround time for tests is totally inappropriate for the return to school. She's looking at a turnaround for the testing results to be at least 48 to 72 hours. And right now they're running about 5 days before test results or longer can come in. So the state is working on that. And I know there've been several questions relating to that. We're very lucky to have a head nurse that worked for over 20 some years at Mass General Hospital in the Contagious Disease Department, Diane Wallace. And she had been communicating with many of you throughout the year of last year when we were closed and during distance learning. And she is working with our cadre of nurses in developing the best plans possible for keeping our students and our staff safe in schools, and I want you to know that. So Diane will be regularly putting out information when we get back to school for parents and resources available for parents. So I thank you for joining us this evening. As Dr. Coran said, we have an email address where you can send your questions. However, if it's school-specific questions such as scheduling, that is in the hands of the principals of the individual schools. So please contact your principals. And thank you, and I hope this was informative. Have a good night and stay safe.